Smiling faces, the family way. Margaret Lewin Quilting will make your day.
Hi, I'm Margaret Lewin and welcome to Margaret Lewin Quilting. Today I am going to show you the process of how I go about picking out threads and patterns when I quilt a quilt. The quilt I have in front of me is actually a wedding present. One of the things I really like to do is to ask if the quilt is going to be used for personal use or if the quilt is going to someone special, if it's an occasion, if a man's going to get it or a woman's going to get it or a child. Because to me, that makes a difference in the pattern that I pick or even potentially the quilt thread. So I've got this all loaded on my long arm. It is a beautiful log cabin block quilt. I'll move the threads that I've started with so that you can see it. I do have an option that I could custom quilt it. With custom quilting, I have the option of looking at this area as one and then the white as another area and putting some type of a design within those frames to quilt it. Or I can always pick just one block, which you can, I think, see one block here. Excuse my finger. I ripped a fingernail off this morning. So there is one block right here. You're seeing the top part of it. And I could do each block individually and put a pattern in the white and a pattern in the print, or, you know, switch it up any way I wanted to. On this design, we're going to do what's called an edge to edge. So I'm going to put the same design all the way across it. It's going to quilt from left to right and from the top to the bottom of the quilt. The designs that I'll get into designs in a second. First, I want to show you my threads. Now, I know that this is a wedding quilt. I know that it is for a shower present for somebody. So I have a choice. I can either make the quilting really bold and have it stand out. And if I wanted to do that, I would use one of these two threads. These are both King Tut threads. This one's called Pewter, and this one is called Pumice. Now, pewter's a solid color, and in order to pick up and decide really how the color is going to look on the quilt, what I do is I take a bunch of the thread and I pool it right on top of the quilt so that I can see what it's going to look like. When I put it over on this side, I don't mind it at all with this fabric. This almost has a little bit of a blue tint to it. Not a huge blue tint, but a little bit. This one has more of a tan or brown tint in it. And I really like the way she's laid out the colors, because what ends up happening is if you look at this from the side, this almost has the appearance of a flower to me. That's what it looks like a little bit to me. So I have the choice of this color, and then I'll put the other one up here, which is called Pumice. This one has a little bit lighter of grays in it, which I like right through here. Let me see if I can, let me grab this and then you might be able to see it. There's a variation of the thread colors. Right here, see how much lighter that is right here? I like that color right there. That's a really, really pretty silvery gray. But I will tell you, see how nice that looks against that? Very, very soft. It's a perfect match to this darker gray, this blue gray. I love this color. What I don't like is there's parts of this thread that almost have a green tint to it. Don't know if you can see it or not, but I see a little bit of a green tint. So I know I don't like this one, even though I like this one little piece right here, right there. It's beautiful with it. But they don't make that in a typical solid. The other thing I noticed is that when I lay this across here, is all I'm seeing is the thread. I'm not seeing the fabric pattern. I'm not seeing anything but that thread. So what that tells me is if I used either one of these, my quilting is going to just stand out. We're not going to see the quilt. We're only going to see the quilting. And I don't want that. I want this beautiful silver and white quilt to really stand out, because it's the quilt that really is important here, because it is a wedding present and it was made for this couple, especially for their wedding. So we really want the quilt itself to stand out. So my next two choices are this one. When you look at this one, this is called white linen. Tucker's gonna talk to you. It is a solid colored thread. And when you lay it over the quilt, because of the fact that so much of the entire quilt is made up of different scraps of fabric. So what happens here is the whites aren't always perfectly white. Whites have different shades and different tones to them. It's like when you go to paint your house, the hardest color to pick is white, because there's so many different shades of white. So here is one of the colors I've picked, and this is called white linen. And this is the other color I have picked, and this one is called Temple. Now, when you set these two together, look at that one. This one almost looks like it's completely off-white, but when I set it next to the quilt, that thread blends right in, because it really is a perfect color to blend in with the patterns that are there. So this next one is called, as I said, it's called Temple. And if you look at this one on there, you would think, oh, when you put these two together like this, you would think that this is absolutely the color that you have to have, because of the fact that the quilt is white, and so you want this nice bright white thread. So if I lay the Temple down, and I'm going to pull it in a tight pull so that hopefully you can see it, look, it almost makes the rest of the quilt, hopefully you can see it, look dirty, because it is such a stark, bright white. I don't like it on there. I'm afraid it's going to have this tint of off-white on the quilt and white in the thread. So again, it's just going to really stand out. And we've already determined that we don't want our thread to stand out. So I'm going to go right back to this one, which is called white linen, which I think is a perfect blend of a nice white. It blends in with our background fabrics, and I just think it's going to be gorgeous. So our thread is our first choice, and we've made that, and it's called white linen. So I'll try to take a really good close-up of this so that you can really see how gorgeous it is. The next thing that we're going to do now that we've got our thread picked out is we're going to look at the actual design of the quilt and the designs of the fabrics and go from there to pick out our quilt pattern. I always have believed that if a quilter picked out a fabric, they picked it out because they liked the design of the fabric. So that's what I use as my starting point to determine exactly what it is that I'm going to quilt on it. So what I'm seeing overall here is that there are some flowers. Right here, there's a flower. But most of it is leaves. There's a little flower right here potentially. And then there's some roses up in here. But mostly we're seeing different leaves, all different kinds of leaves. And I like that. I like the fact that it's got all of these leaves all over it because the leaves are really gender neutral. Whereas you tend to, with a quilt, look at flowers and think it's a woman's quilt, not a quilt for a couple. And I want to keep that in my head when I go to look at patterns. As I said before, I always want to know who the quilt's going to or what its use is going to be. Is the quilt going to be used in a formal living room that they don't use a whole lot, over the back of a couch? Or is the quilt going to go on a child's bed? Those are just some of the questions that I ask myself, or ask the quilter what it's going to be used for, because it really does help me in determining what I'm going to use for a quilting pattern. So now, because this quilt has mostly leaves all over it, it directed me towards a leaf pattern to quilt it with. But let's keep in mind that this is a wedding quilt. It's a two-tone quilt, basically. It's gray and white, and it is for a couple. So it's not a child's quilt, and I want to remember that when I'm picking out my design. Okay, so now let's go over to our designs, and I'm going to show you the two leaves that I picked out for this quilt, the leaf designs, and I will explain to you exactly why I picked the ones I did. So here we go. I'm hoping that you can easily see my monitor. I am actually filming the monitor from a separate camera, so I'm certain that it makes it a little bit difficult for you to see it, but this is how I can do it. I picked out two patterns. Both of them are by a designer called Anne Bright, and I'm going to put both of them up on the screen for you so you can see them. And both of them have leaves in them. They're both beautiful patterns. They'll both stitch edge to edge, but they are definitely different patterns. The first one up at the top is called Leaves Symphony. I love this pattern. I love it because so many of the different leaves, such as these and these, are in this quilt exactly like that. They're there. I can see the duplication of them when I look over at the patterns of the fabric. This is the second one, and this one is called Crosshatch Leaves, and I'm certain that it's because of these little crosshatches in there. This, to me, would be perfect on a more modern quilt, or on a fun quilt, or on a quilt that would be for a man or a boy, anything like that. I don't like this one particularly for a wedding quilt, and the reason for it is because this log cabin quilt really screams elegance to me. I think it is that silver and white together just really show me, or to me say, I'm an elegant formal quilt, which led me to this design here. It is still leaves, although the leaves are a little bit more abstract, but this crosshatch that has been added to the inside of the leaves, to me, just really says traditional, elegant, beautiful, formal. And so this actually is the pattern that I have picked to do the quilt. So the next thing I'm going to do is get it all set up, and I'm going to start quilting it. Once I get a couple rows of it quilted, I'll take a picture of it so you can see exactly what it looks like. But in the meantime, this is how I go about making my decisions for how I'm going to quilt somebody's quilt when they haven't picked out the design. Now, if they were here and they were looking at this with me, I would probably have given them 4 different designs that I really thought would look good with it, but I also would be open to any suggestions that they had on the quilt. I have talked to this woman and I have told her that I'm leaning towards leaves. She was great with that. Told me anything I wanted to do with it would be fine. But if she had a strong, if when I had talked to her, she had an opinion. So when I talked to her, I asked her what it was that she wanted for a quilting pattern. And at the same time, I told her that I did suggest a leaf type of pattern. She was fine with that, felt it was a good choice. So this is what I've gone ahead and chosen. So I'm going to get it quilted, and then I will bring you back and let you see what it looks like. All right, I've gotten a couple of rows quilted, to say the least. I'm about a little past halfway through the quilt, but I wanted to stop and let you take a look at it and see how it is quilting out. I absolutely love the fact that in this pattern, we've got these nice little puffy parts, and what has gotten those to happen is a combination of a couple of things. Number one, this cross hatching, this nice tight quilting through this area, and then a nice open spot through here. So when you've got that contrast of tight and open, what happens is it does tend to make the quilt a little bit puffy. The other thing that we have done, or I've done with this quilt, is it's being quilted with wool batting, and that wool batting absolutely makes it pop. I am thrilled with the way it's coming out. I think it's going to be stunning when it's all done. So I'm going to go ahead and keep quilting this. If you'd like to see what it looked like when I got it all done quilting, the best place to see how it looked when I got it all done is a couple of different spots. You can check out my Facebook group, Margaret Lewin Quilting, and I will have pictures posted on there. Another place to check out would be my Instagram account, where I will be posting pictures there also. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please do subscribe. Hit that big red button down there, and don't forget to hit the bell so that you get notifications whenever I upload a video. Thank you so much for joining me today. Don't forget to press that thumbs up button, and hopefully I'll see you back here again really soon. Bye, everybody.